yard for men, a smaller yard for women and children. You'll see on one side there's a double-doored entrance, a kind of security entrance on that side. They had a blacksmith shop where they made chains. On the other, also next to it, they had a kitchen for preparing food to be taken in. But you're there. I mean, you really see exactly what went on there and how the Africans regarded. There's no missing it. If you look closely as well, you can see places where cannons were pointed into the slave yard. As it was the practice for slave ships to bring the captives up onto the deck and to force them to exercise at gunpoint inside an enclosure. And the same thing on the slave ships. Cannons were pointed in at them to intimidate them. The cannons were filled with powder, no ball, but the idea was if they attempted to escape, you fired those off, and the smoke and the concussion of the thing, the slave traders used that to bring these people under control. So it is an absolutely vivid situation, and it's very, very difficult for most people. But it's there. I remember Wilson Moran in the film, The Language You Cry in Those Years. And I'll never read Wilson's comment that was he had just seen it. And his comment on camera was that, I'll come back to Sierra Leone. I'll definitely come back to Sierra Leone. What he said quite a few years ago, he said, I don't think I would come back here. So he is today.
My first time, second run back. I came back, but I never went back.
So it is, as Amadou said, it's clearly the most important historic site in Africa for the United States. And the reason for that being that only about 4% of the African captives were taken across the Atlantic to what's now the United States. 4%. 96% were taken to the Caribbean Basin and Brazil, but this was the only slave trade outpost that sent substantial numbers of people to what is now the United States, and especially to South Carolina and Georgia. So it's very, very important for African Americans, important for American history in a number of ways that he'll be explaining as well. Now, when you go to Old Yagala, this African kind of a fortress built on top of a granite mesa, this is very special. I think this may be the only, certainly the first tour group ever to go there. And most Sierra Leoneans as yet are not aware of it. But it's a place where you can see for 20 miles when you're up there. If you have the strength to get to the top. It was very taxing for me the first time I went there. The wind whips you, but you can look and see 20 miles away. And that meant that the people at that time, during the slave trade period, could see these armies that would rampage through the countryside, kidnapping people in every village. And in this particular setting, the local people of the Limba tribe, they would all, once they saw that these people were coming, this army was coming, they would withdraw up there. In perfect position to protect themselves because there's a very strong freshwater spring that's always been still gushing, and you'll see it. So they could hold out for a long time. And because it's granite and you couldn't put a wooden post in the ground, they had to actually invent stone architecture. And it's a bit eerie when you look at it because you imagine these people had never seen any other example, and they just improvised it. And to me, the architecture looks a bit like a Star Wars set. It's something very unusual about it. And this is a very special opportunity to have. And of course, that site is very much plays in the local traditions of the griots or guillotas, as they call it here. And it's also an area where there's enormous preservation of tradition in that immediate area. You'll see it for yourself. Freetown, which you'll see later on in your